Hello, everyone, and welcome to February edition of Healthy Bodies Challenge, brought to you by the Christ Hospital. We're here today to speak to you about heart health in the month of February because we are all about advocating and supporting women. Now, last month, as you remember, we stepped into identifying our intentions. So really understanding more about not only what we wanted to do this next year, but why we wanted to do it in order to be able to actually achieve our goals. And I think that really establishing our why can help us step into this month and really understanding more about why taking care of our heart health is so important as women. We know that 1 in 3 women are impacted and unfortunately die from heart disease every year. And we know that it is the #1 killer of women in the US. So today we have incredible speakers here to talk to you about this. But what I want you to take away is that this isn't just about heart health. This is about supporting and empowering a group of women to be able to be there for each other, to educate, unite, and inspire one another as we go to combat this horrendous disease. And so today we have 3 incredible women. We have Courtney Martin from Go Red for Women, the American Heart Association. We have Nora Fink of Nora Fink Personal Styling. And we have Dr. Odayme Quesada of the Christ Hospital Health Network's Women's Heart Center. So would you ladies care to introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'll start. So thanks, Stevie, for having me today. Super excited to be here, and what great timing during American Heart Month. As Stevie said, I'm Courtney Martin. I'm with the Go Red for Women movement here in Cincinnati, and just thrilled to have such strong advocates for women's heart health and to be able to share a few tips and make it a little less scary today. Like Stevie said, it does affect 1 in 3 women, but the good news is that it's 80% preventable, and I know we'll dive into that a little bit too. So excited to kind of just share some insights and get some more people healthy.
Love it. Thank you for joining us. Nora, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Nora Fink, and I am the owner and founder of Nora Fink Personal Styling. And I am here just to share with you my tips for managing stress and determining what's important in life. And all these things lead to a reduction in coping behaviors that can impact your heart health.
Love that. Thank you so much for being here, Nora. And Dr. Quesada?
So my name is Odayme Quesada, and I am the new medical director of the brand new Women's Heart Center at the Christ Hospital. And I'm excited to be here with all of you, particularly this month. This is my first month in Cincinnati as the medical director of the Women's Heart Center, and really driving the message of women's heart disease and what is different about women's heart disease, and sharing some tips and tricks. Like Courtney mentioned, we can prevent disease if we're aware of it. And so I'm excited to be here with all of you.
Oh my gosh. Well, we are thrilled to have you here today and here in Cincinnati, because we know that there's so many women that are really, their disease is overlooked. I mean, they really do establish relationships with their primary care physicians, but we know that women's bodies are different than men's bodies. And so we're just incredibly grateful to have you here and speaking on behalf of that. And I think that kind of leads me into kind of our first topic, which we know that there's a lot of heart health misconceptions. We know that heart disease is the #1 killer of women. We know that that a lot of time this misdiagnosis is part of the issue. And maybe sometimes it's also about maybe not knowing our bodies enough. And so Dr. Quesada and Courtney, I'd love for you to just share a little bit from your expert perspectives from the American Heart Association and from the Christ Hospital. What are some of the key misconceptions with heart health that might be contributing to this, 1 in 3 diagnosis?
I can start with that. So there is multi-layered, I would say. We don't recognize many times that women have specific risk factors that are unique to them. And there's more and more research that's now going into this to better understand that. For instance, adverse pregnancy outcomes is very women specific, early menopause, autoimmune diseases affect women more often. So that's one thing that I think is important to shed some light on. And you mentioned, Stevie, something that's very important, which is, for women to know their bodies, because as I think about what my patients tell me, a lot of them seek medical attention because they know their body and because they know there's something wrong. And the reason I bring this up is to highlight something that's really important, especially, to bring up this month, and especially on Friday, as we think of Women's Heart Day, is that women don't always present with the classic chest pain, crushing chest pain. They don't. But what's really interesting is when a woman does know their body and they truly know there's something wrong, they seek medical attention if they listen to that. A lot of them ignore it, which is what we don't want. But the ones that listen to it, sometimes they do go to the hospital, and because they don't have those classic symptoms, can be misdiagnosed or falsely reassured. So that's why it's so important that they also advocate for themselves. And just really briefly, things like any pain above the waist in a woman should be concerning, especially if it's new. Extreme fatigue, difficulty breathing, pain in the arm and the neck. All of these are symptoms that my patients have told me was the reason they went to the hospital. Some of them with heart attacks, other of them with other cardiac diseases.
And what's so crazy about that, just if we're getting real for a second, there's been things that come up, and sometimes you're like, like it's part of getting old, or like I'm rushing off to a meeting. Do I really have time to be like having a heart attack right now? And I always go back to that. There's an Elizabeth Banks commercial the American Heart Association did a couple of years ago that was like, it's just a little heart attack. But
it's classic.
I'll make sure I post it in the comments. But it's so important, I think, because we do kind of overlook a lot of things. I know I spoke with one of the patients that you recently saw yesterday, and she talked about that she had been misdiagnosed just with like it just being stress, but she actually has a disease. What is it called? Small artery disease.
Coronary microvascular dysfunction, which is essentially disease of the tiny vessels in the heart, missed very often.
Missed so often. And she had a mini stroke and didn't even realize it. Small frame, petite woman that objectively looks very healthy, but has a long history of heart disease and a lot of things that happen. So I think that I'm just saying that I hear the words that you're like, if you, waist from the waist up, if you've got something going on, I can tell you so many times that just women talk about it, but actually the act of doing it, it just is really important to build that relationship with your primary care doctor. So you have a baseline of knowing what's normal versus what's not. And then as you step into that, being able to have access to somebody such as yourself that sees everything and is a hyper specialist in this space, so that way you can really be able to diagnose things that are often overlooked.
Yeah, and I love everything that Dr. Quesada said. All the myths and everything is really why Go Red for Women was created 17 years ago. I should also give the disclaimer that I am not a medical professional. I did not go to med school. I help with education and raise money for really smart people like Dr. Quesada to do the research. But really it was created because women were going to their doctors with these abnormal symptoms and being sent home. Saying you have indigestion, you have anxiety, and it was just the lack of knowledge. No research was being done on women. Still a major gap for us, and we can kind of chat about that, but there were also no women doing the research to say, hey, there's no women in the room. So I love having these conversations and just making this topic, normalize it, talk to your friends about their heart health. Go Red was created to educate the medical community, but also the general public, so that we did listen to our bodies. We did get that second opinion if we had that nagging, like, nope, I know it's something different. And then just really excited that also all the money we raise does go toward female-focused research, outreach, and education. So everything that I get to do every day is all centered around making women healthier, and it's just very, very exciting.
Yeah, so this used to be known as cardiac syndrome X, okay? Because when there was no research, that was where it was all lumped in. Oh, women all have, these symptoms. There are these strange symptoms. And what's interesting, and I just want to point out, because it's just, again, even doctors, a lot of doctors don't even know about coronary microvascular dysfunction. So it's important that we let the women know so they can advocate for themselves and do seek, like you're pointing out, a second opinion from an expert such as myself. But yeah, they may have, a microvascular dysfunction could have a normal stress test, which many times is used to rule out heart disease. But what is important to know is that it rules out obstructive cardiac disease or significant heart blockage. Microvascular disease is in the absence of significant heart blockage. So even if their stress is negative, even if they're an angiogram, which is thought to be gold standard to identify heart disease, even if that's negative, but again, if they listen to their bodies and they know there's something wrong, even though they've been told, no, it's stress, no, it's this, that's really the women that are coming to our clinic at the Women's Heart Center. And a lot of them have real disease. It's just microvascular disease.
That's so crazy. And you think about how many times I know that I've done this, like outsourcing expertise, right? Like I know that something's wrong. They told me there's nothing to worry about. And guess what? It is way more convenient for me to listen to somebody who tells me that nothing's wrong with me and for me to really try to believe that than to advocate for myself and look to an expert and say, thank you, but I'm going to get a second opinion. And I think that that's really what we're trying to do is just encourage people that know yourself, know your body, know that, don't be afraid to go and ask and step into that and be able to create some space and time, I think, for yourself. And so that kind of takes me to the next topic of, we as women live this crazy rat race of a life, and we are run, 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 go, go, go. And as a part of the intention setting, we've said with the Healthy Bodies Challenge, we're trying to create real space to create time for ourselves, to invest in ourselves. And it's been really interesting because when you see the intentions, there's some really incredible women that talk about, I'm done making excuses. This is the time that I'm going to make different choices, or I'm going to set boundaries for myself so I can invest in myself. And I am just really subscribed to this idea. But one of the people that has really led the way on this is Nora Fink, because I always say she has really shifted my mindset as a mother about how I need to be doing things or not need to be doing things. And through our conversations and dialogues as peers in this community, but really as friends, I just really value her perspective on this. So Nora, I'd love for you to just share with everybody a little bit about how we might be able to make better choices to reduce stress in our lives, the things that we know don't allow for us to create time to invest in ourselves.
Sure. And thank you. You always give me such a glowing introduction. I feel humbled. A little background about myself. So I worked in corporate America, and no matter what I was doing, I was always looking at how everyone was dressed. And everyone says to me, do you criticize how everyone dresses? And I can honestly say no, but I do criticize how everyone shops. So what that led me to do is after I finished my MBA, I realized that, and there's a metaphor in this, is that there's just so much stuff. There's so much stuff. And retailers' answer to dressing well or not dressing well was to just throw more stuff at the problem, just product. And I was like, throwing more product at the problem is not the answer. And that's where I started my business, Nora Fink Personal Styling, where I do people's personal shopping, and closet cleanouts and wardrobe consultations and corporate consulting. And what I realized, which Dr. Quesada and Courtney were talking about, it's A, making the relationship, which I have with my clients, and B, really figuring out what the problem is first. And so when I have a new client, it always begins with a conversation. Why did you call? And I say it's never just about the clothes. I got divorced, I didn't get divorced, I lost weight, I got promoted, I didn't get promoted. There's something. So what leads me to my overarching theme of today, whether it's with your personal health or your stress level or your closet, you have to determine what is important. And one topic I'll come back to frequently is that we are in this age of the attention economy. Everybody wants your attention. Pop-up ads want your attention. The American Heart Association wants your attention. Everybody wants your attention. So you have to start by saying, like, what is important to me? And as I'll talk about later, that could and should change. It could change monthly. It could change yearly. If you have a baby, if you have a teenager, it should all change. And you decide what's important and then realize that your attention is being monetized and decide how you want to spend your attention. The second thing, which we can get to later, is, and Stevie knows I'm kind of a zealot about this, I feel like although the messaging was well intended, women got this message that they got the message women can do everything. And women can do everything. They don't have to do everything. And they certainly don't have to do it all at the same time. No one can do it. Like, men can't do it, nobody can do it. And so for myself, I have so many ideas all the time. And I have to tell myself, Nora, you can do it all. You cannot do it all right now. And here's what's important. So I'll turn it back to you, but that's kind of my overarching mission, to be able to do as much as I do and have fun and feel relaxed, is that it's a fluid motion that I'm in.
Oh,
and
I think that I think that the thing that I subscribe to the most, that you really impress on me, is I'll go back to the metaphor of like children in sports, right? So if anybody's in here watching and your children, that your child has to play sports to get into college, right? Well, first off, you've already made this decision that your child is going to college. Like, congratulations. Like, that's something you value, so that's what you've done. So now we're at the age of 3 when you've made the decision that your child needs to start sports at the age of 3 because that's really important for them to do. And like by the age of 11, they're in traveling sports because that's when all the people who get college scholarships, and like there's all of these things that you put on this life path, and there's no fluidity to, does your child even want to do that? Because if they don't, then that brings stress and anxiety and accountability. You're now driving all over the state of Ohio for something that isn't even something that you both want. You're doing this because you feel like you should do it. And I guess my point is that when we think about time being the only non-renewable resource, and you think about the way you're going to spend your time every single day, the piece that's really unlocked for me through working with Nora in a professional capacity and with and in a personal stance is that I just think that if you take the time that it takes to invest in your health first, and you start with your health and wellness, and you think about the things that are going to really make you happy right now, not in 10 years, but like look at today, and you align your day with intention around how that's going to be. And of course, you're bringing your kids brings you, bringing them joy brings you joy, but that's not going to bring you all of the joy. It's not going to fill you all up. You have to make choices for yourself. And so I just think that a lot of times we talk about surviving, but a lot of the reasons why we're surviving is because we're trying to do everything right now, and we're trying to make everybody happy right now. And we feel a lot of resentment. We get a lot of stress because we're totally overwhelming, and we blame other people, and it's really our fault. And I think that that's just the part that personal accountability kind of blew my mind. It was like, oh, like I decide to do this to myself every day. And then I met Nora, and I was like, but she's not doing it. Why isn't she doing it? And she talks about her nonchalance can become very offensive to other people. And I just like try to channel that a lot of like, nope, unsubscribe, not doing it. Thank you. Next. What are we doing?
That's it. That should be your little tagline, is unsubscribe. I'm just unsubscribing for that. And I can let Courtney and Dr. Quesada talk about this more, but really for myself, if I am not well fed, if I am not well slept, and if I don't feel good, it just doesn't matter how many ideas I have. Everyone around me will pay because I didn't, and myself, because I didn't take care of my own needs first. So I'll turn it back to them.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I was going to share on that point too, because we do, and again, not a medical professional, talk to your doctor, but we do a lot of wellness seminars and just go to different companies and organizations and just chat with them about, wellness and making that change. We always preach, don't do it all at once. Don't say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to eat right and exercise and get a full night's sleep and do all of this. It's just not sustainable. So which of those one things can you think about maybe building into your lifestyle today, this week, get used to it, and then adding on from there? And I know that sounds so basic, but I know when, if I go to a seminar and I'm really motivated by the speaker, I want to go do it all. I'll do it all for 3 days and stop. So, think about that one thing, and, maybe it is, okay, you're drinking 3 sodas a day. Can you cut back to 1? Don't even say I'm done drinking soda for my life. Like, that might not be realistic for you. So just think about those smaller steps that you can take, and they will make a difference in the long run, and they're going to be so much more sustainable.
Oh, I love that so much. And it's the tangible piece that just all contribute to this too, is that accountability circle, building your squad. What does that look like? In the last discussion with Dr. Beaulieu and Dr. Kenny, they, as primary care physicians, said the number one thing that you can do is to invest in a community of people that really care about you and people that are going to hold you accountable for maybe not making the right choices, or support you and celebrate you, more importantly, when you are making the right choices. And if you're really I always say this, you're the average of the 5 people around you. It's what creates your culture and your ecosystem. And so nutrition is just so much more than just the food you put in your body, but about all of the other things that you're taking in constantly. And so Dr. Quesada, I know that there's some really tangible things that we can do to not only just make better choices, but just honestly, like if we were to do a couple of things to kind of get things on the right direction of understanding our baseline, where are we with our heart health, and then things we can do to track to make sure as we age, what would you say?
The one thing that we encourage is for people to know their numbers, right? Because when we talk about risk factors for heart disease, in order to know if you have those risk factors, to some degree, you need to know some numbers. Of course, if you have a family history, if you've smoked, you definitely should quit. That's like the number one thing, a risk factor that you can modify. But other things are, what is your blood pressure, right? Are you a hypertensive? Are you a pre-hypertensive? So knowing a person's blood pressure is important, knowing blood glucose to make sure they're not diabetic and not aware of it. Making sure they know their body mass index, know their weight and their height, and make sure they're within their goal. So those are important. Parts, know the cholesterol level that requires a lab test. So this is why it's important to have an established primary care provider. And we do have a preventive program in the Women's Heart Center because we can help them get those numbers. We also have screening testing that can be done to have access to those numbers. And then essentially we can put those numbers plus some of the history into account and come up with a risk score, a risk assessment for someone's risk of having heart disease. What is that percentage? And then depending on that percentage, we always encourage lifestyle, of course, modifications, which means, like you're all pointing out, the importance of wellness. And in our clinic, the one thing we recommend for everyone, which is very important, especially this time of the year, is exercise. I mean, AHA is very clear that everyone should get, at least 30 minutes of exercise, moderate exercise, 5 days a week. And it's funny because my patients come in and I'm like, 2021 is the year. This is your year. You're not going to start at 5 days, 30 minutes, but you will get there by my next visit, right? So I tell them, I'm like, it's a prescription. Like, now it's a doctor telling you, like, so I feel like they're like, I just needed, they kind of, some of them feel like they need me to be the, almost like write it down and really push for it from like the doctor hat. But yeah, it's so important and we really emphasize it. And the other part is, diet can make a difference. We recommend the Mediterranean diet, again, not overnight, but just make them aware of small changes that they can make that are feasible, that are not going to really, change the way the food tastes, etc. So that again, it's more of like changing lifestyle towards more to better, better lifestyle, being aware of wellness, etc.
Well, and I think that as a person that grew up, my mother has high blood pressure and she's always had it since she was young. We have a family history of heart disease. And so we grew up eating no salts. We grew up, eating what I thought was healthy, right? I was like, oh, we don't put salt on anything. We're super healthy. But those behaviors are really ingrained in you. I mean, there are based on social determinants of health. So for those of you that are watching this, I mean, really like your zip code can a lot of times really determine your access to healthy food and healthy behaviors. And so I just want to encourage people to understand that coming from a person that owns a wellness company, I mean, I grew up thinking that like starch, vegetables, corn, potatoes, all of those things were like as good as eating kale, or that they were, that like walking, 30 minutes a day was kind of like a luxury. It wasn't like, because if you were on your feet standing all day for a job, then that was just as okay. And I think that when we talk about determining new behaviors, I think that it's really just about, like we said, slow and steady. You're not going to do things and change potentially your family history's behaviors overnight. But I think it's just about those really small steps and really just paying more attention, I think is really what we want you to do. Is just like pay more attention, see what you're doing. You can write down your behaviors and things that you, and questions for your doctor. So
Phoebe, I have a quick thought on that.
Yeah.
I've noticed this with my clients, and I'll be interested to hear Dr. Quesada's thoughts. And when Courtney said you go to a seminar and then you're like, okay, I'm going to do all these things. I think what I've noticed, because I get to meet so many people, is people forget that wellness can be fun and it can be playful. It just doesn't have to be so serious.
Yeah.
So if you are, not into fruits and vegetables, go to the grocery and say to yourself, here's my rule. I have to buy 5 things I've never eaten before. I have a rule with myself where if I want to really talk on the phone, like call an old friend, I have to be walking.
Yeah.
Like I have to be outside. I make these little like fun things, and then to your point, especially if you grew up a certain way or you're trying to change your behavior, it's more a playful, joyful approach than I didn't walk again today. And you're like, well, I called my mom and I walked for 7 minutes, or I called my college roommate and I walked for 8 minutes. But it just doesn't all have to be so heavy all the time.
I agree. And so I watched all of Bridgerton working out because I said I don't really watch a lot of TV, but I wanted to understand the hype. And so I blew through that through working out. It was probably one of the best weeks of working out of the year because I really love the style and like just the attention to detail and all of that. Anyways, enough about Bridgerton. But to your point, it's finding things that you would normally like. What's the thing that brings you joy and gets you excited? Is it creativity? Is it socialization? Is it, for me, I feel like I have this crazy philosophy about like, if I'm watching TV and like it needs to be in service of something. Like I'm not like a rest type of person, and that's okay because it gets me moving. So I would love to know, I mean, like on a personal level, I don't know if Dr. Quesada or Courtney, if you have any like tricks that you have to kind of get yourself like going that you could share with people. I know like we didn't talk about this before, but I'm curious.
So I have a similar story to you, Stevie, in that I'm Cuban. Okay. So there's no such thing as vegetables in the Cuban diet. It's just really a lot of starch and meats, and that is it. And I grew up, that was what I ate. And, because I've been fortunate enough to live in different cities and experience different cultures. And I just, I really have changed my life, my lifestyle to very different from the lifestyle had I done what my family does, what they grew up eating. So it's just really, but it was a conscious effort, right? Like when I move, but it also helps the environment. When I moved to California, it's a very outdoorsy kind of state. You're always outside doing activities. But that led to that framework. It also, I have, similar to Nora, I go to the grocery store and I do not allow myself to buy things that I want. I really just limit it to vegetables and the things that I promote, because I feel like I tell my patients to do this. I should do it myself. So I really use the grocery store. I definitely try not to go hungry. And I use that as my way of, of like limiting so that I could adhere to a healthy diet, especially Monday through Friday. I do believe that you need sometimes a day here or there just to be able to, adhere to it. At least that's how what works for me, Monday through Friday. But this idea and this concept of like wanting to stay active, when I moved here, now I'm dealing with winters, I ended up buying a bike because I feel like I just want to make sure I stay in that mindset where I do exercise, and it helps me with stress. For me, it's become a stress reliever. And what I tell my patients is, think of exercise, think of those 30 minutes as you time. You're away from whatever, from work, from the kids, from whatever stress you have. Best case scenario is if you can go outside, enjoy the fresh air. But even if you go to your basement or go, one tip we give people is go out, if you have access to stairs, just go up and down the stairs. So we do give all these different tips to our patients that don't have, like, whether it's a treadmill or a bike at home, just like, how do you stay active even in the winter time? Because it allows for you time. That's how I kind of think about it.
Are you team Echelon, Peloton, or a different one?
Peloton.
No, they're so shamed. That's awesome. I love that. H Ventures, Elizabeth Edwards was a huge investor promoter. She's based here out of Cincinnati, but we're an Echelon family, and we, it's funny. Like, there's definitely, like, you're in one of two camps, I feel like.
Yeah.
Love that. I started doing work calls on the Echelon. Now, I'm not in super great shape right now, and because I stopped running throughout the winter, but I kind of get out of breath sometimes. But it's great because a lot of times when I'm like passively listening or doing something, I don't necessarily need to contribute as much. It's kind of nice. But Courtney, I don't know about you. Like, do you have anything that kind of, like, what's your carrot? What's your idea? How do you keep motivated?
Yeah, I had to switch gears, obviously, when the pandemic hit. So I do have not a fancy stationary bike, but I've got a fit desk at my office that I could sit my laptop on and, be cycling while I was listening to calls. And then I had also finally, for the first time in my life, found an actual workout class that I was really enjoyed and carved out time. And that was my priority every week. I was going to hot yoga 2 to 3 times a week, which is just not something, if you know me, that would come out of my mouth. So, had found this thing and really, really loved it. And then pandemic, work from home, what do we do? So I had to figure out what that was for me. And it was to get away from my computer. So I didn't want a bike that I could sit my computer in front of. I needed that time away. So that was my time every day, was just to go walk outside for a half an hour, have a silly comedy podcast that I would like to listen to. And I didn't listen to it unless I was walking, so that was kind of my time to just really spend with myself. And it was funny because sometimes my husband would be like, well, I'll go walk with you. I'm like, okay, I want you to be healthy too, but I really want to listen to this podcast. So
I love that. Well,
sometimes I'd let him walk with me, and then we would listen to the podcast together later that night.
I feel like that's well, but I think you should join when it's warm out. I don't know, Nora, if you're going to be doing your yoga in the park again this year, but that I'm really excited for that to come back, because I'm a very big outdoors person, and I know I'm kind of chomping at the bit to get things going. But yoga is one of those things, for some reason, I do not like running with people, but I do like doing yoga with other people, because I feel like I learn a lot more from just watching an instructor who's been doing it for a gajillion years and like seeing how other normal people do yoga.
So Dr. Quesada, I know Courtney knows me, but you and I are just meeting. So I'm like a very analog person, and I love the outdoors. And I'm happy, and I want other people to be happy. So one thing my husband and I do is we sponsor the outdoor yoga program at Burnett Woods. So you're welcome to tell all your patients. It goes May until it gets too cold and everyone mutinies. But it's entirely complimentary, and it's taught by the instructors at World Peace Yoga. And to bring what we were just talking about full circle, it is amazing because one, you're exercising, two, you're outside and you're just in nature, and three, you become part of a community. And it's been a real honor to work with the Parks Foundation to make this for people. And it's been such a great equalizer. And I was like, I got a little teared up, a little emotional, because there was a woman at one class who was very heavy and clearly had not done yoga before. And I just felt so honored that we had created an inclusive space that she would feel comfortable to come. And I think if people, when we go back to what's important, really, she must have had to do a lot to say, like, this is important to me and I'm going to do it. It doesn't feel judgmental. But you also need the mental space to be able to think through those things and come. But it's been a wonderful program, and it goes on this summer. So spread the word.
Yes, May. So we'll make sure we dive into that. I'm very excited for that to come back. I think
that's amazing.
Yes.
And
awesome.
Talking about that woman makes me think, I had a conversation last year, and it's just stuck with me so much. And I think we forget that as women, as wives, as mothers, as coworkers, whatever, people are looking at us. So the conversation I'm thinking about was a woman who had 2 small children, and after she put them to bed every night is when she would get her workout in. And she said, one day it dawned on me, I need them to see me doing this. Like, yes, I need my time with my kids, but I don't want to do this in secret. I want them to see me as an example and not hear from other people that exercise and movement should be a part of your life. So she completely changed her schedule so that her kids could see that that was such an important part of her day. And sometimes they would, do it with her. But just to remember that too, that ripple effect that we never know, or, you may or may not know about, but people are watching and are going to model your behavior at home and out in the world.
I love it. And that's as women, I think that we talk a lot about, we sometimes won't do things for ourselves, but hey, if it's a motivator and you can do it for somebody else, I think that that's really crucial. And that kind of takes me to our next topic that I kind of wanted to dive into, which was about research. So research is one of these incredible pieces that we assume just happens in a vacuum without us, with people that we don't know. And it just, all of a sudden, our clinical researchers come up with the solutions for the future that keep us healthy. But the reality of it is that it wasn't until the 90s that women started to actually become a part of big research trials and efforts in healthcare. And it's really mind-blowing because, as Dr. Quesada had mentioned before, there's a lot that we don't know, and a lot that we're still learning about women and heart health. And I think that the call to action here that you're going to hear from everyone is that you are a part of the solution. And there are a lot of ways to get involved with research. And I'll just make sure that research is not this scary, crazy thing. It is really just you as a human showing up and saying, I'm invested in the future health and wellness of women. And I'm going to do this for the future of healthcare. And I think that that's just the main thing that I wanted to talk about. But I don't know, Dr. Quesada, can you share just a little bit? You are a clinical researcher yourself, a little bit about what you're working on in research and how people can maybe get involved.
Yeah, thank you for bringing and highlighting something that, as you mentioned, is now well recognized how behind we are in women's heart disease research. And again, I can't thank you enough for bringing that. And that's really one of the things that drove me to become a clinical investigator. So I'm a cardiologist, but I'm also an NIH-funded clinical investigator in women's heart disease. And one thing that I became very interested in with the work that I started a few years ago, is I couldn't understand, because the literature is lacking. Why is it that women with hypertensive disorders of pregnancy, also known as pregnancy-related hypertension, preeclampsia, why is it that the women that have these complications in pregnancy are at a higher risk of heart disease later in life? And we're talking about real heart disease. It's not just hypertension. People think, oh yes, if you have hypertension during pregnancy, you're more likely to get hypertension later in life. Yes, that's true. But they're also at fourfold risk of having heart failure. They are at a high risk of having just overall heart disease and even dying from heart disease. So it's not something that's trivial, but we don't understand it. So my NIH study is a 5-year grant to help us understand the why. What is it that's causing this? What are the mechanisms? And so we are very excited that we are doing this study at the Christ Hospital Women's Heart Center, where we're trying to better understand this. Of course, as you're pointing out, the only way that we're going to understand this is if we have women volunteer their time to be part of this study. Both women with these preeclampsia, these pregnancies that were complicated by preeclampsia, and also women with normal pregnancies, because then we compare the heart function in those that had the complication of preeclampsia and the ones that didn't, so that we better understand what it is that's causing this. And so it's an incredible opportunity, as you were mentioning, to just, give to the future. And even I think this particular study can even be beneficial for the women that are part of it, because they get free testing as part of the study. They also get a $50 gift over time. And again, they're helping us move the field forward. So that's my NIH study. We're very excited that we have other studies at the Women's Heart Center related to what we specialize in, which is ischemia with non-obstructive coronary artery disease. The Warrior trial is a multi-center trial that's coming, starting very courtney, so that we can better have guidelines on how to treat these women. And we have, we started a study in coronary microvascular dysfunction that I had talked about a little bit. So we are very excited that our Women's Heart Center has such a strong research mission, because I strongly feel that without research, we can move this field forward.
No, I think that that's so phenomenal. And just, again, there's so many perks and upsides personally to being a part of this, because you do get tested, you get to learn more. So if you were going to go do this anyways, like the statistics don't lie. 1 in 3 women, right? And so if you think about just taking this as a step forward, if not for yourself, do it for other people and see if you qualify. And then, there's $50 out of it and a free test. And so I think that there's a lot of women, and especially women who are caring for others. Think about it, this being the future of, what you can do for not only your peers, but your children and all of that. And then I know for the American Heart Association, we talk a lot about research goes red. So for all of the same reasons, women being under-researched and being in a place where we need to learn more, Research Goes Red is just a really phenomenal, very easy to engage with solution that I know as Women of Impact, I've kind of dove in, trying to learn more about it, and I was really pleasantly surprised at how simple it was, Courtney. So I'd love to hear more about how American Heart Association is looking at research and the key focus for this year.
I am so glad to hear that you had an easy experience with it. That's how it was built. So it is a platform called Research Goes Red, and it is because women are still underrepresented in research. I think right now we represent about 38% of the population that cardiovascular research is taking place on, so still not nearly enough. So the platform was created with Project Baseline and Verily, and really it's just a portal, and you've got options. So you go in and sign up just to say, like, I'm interested in potentially participating in research. It's not signing saying, I'm going to donate XYZ organs to you right now. But it's just going in, and you can opt to take surveys. You can opt to give some of your health history information. You can opt to participate in other opportunities. You might find out about opportunities like Dr. Quesada's, that you kind of do a profile and kind of give a little bit of information, and then they'll just send you information and researches and studies that you can opt into. So super simple, can make the biggest difference. And it really is right now just about getting more women involved and understanding the need to have our voices be a part of this.
I think it's so crucial as we look at stepping into this space and thinking about, I know we think so much about the now, and we try to be totally and fully present now with ourselves and what's going on and managing the day to day. We as a community just have to really start being better about looking out for like what's this greater good look like, and how we can actually really believe in science and step into this space and support the advancements. And as a proud Cincinnatian, here's what I would say is, we are doing work here that people are not doing anywhere else across the country. And I know that that is something for me I've always felt very strongly about in our healthcare community. We have some of the strongest healthcare providers and the strongest healthcare researchers in the world right here in our backyard. And I think that, what's that saying, you can't be a prophet in your hometown? I think that a lot of times we talk a lot as Cincinnatians about the things that we're maybe not so great at, but we don't celebrate enough the fact that we really are leading the charge in a lot of these spaces. And being a part of that in history is just really phenomenal. And I'm very proud to be a part of that too. And so I think we've kind of come to this last piece of, as we think about what we can do to help support women, I would love for you to be able to talk a little bit about different like key takeaways that we can have as we step into the world now. We've watched this, we've engaged with this, and just do kind of a sound off of what's the one kind of key thing that you would want people to take away from this experience today that they could go and do to invest in their heart health. So Courtney, do you want to lead us off?
Sure, I'm happy to. And I think I mentioned it before, but it's just to kind of think about what gets you excited and what's one thing you can do. Not what are 10 things you can do today, but what's one thing you can do to take some time for yourself to make that next step. And, people immediately go to diet. Maybe it is something with your food, but maybe it is getting enough sleep every night. Maybe it is about, moving a little bit more. We don't like to say the word exercise. So, getting those extra steps in. It doesn't have to be all at once during the day. So just thinking about what that can look like for you. And then I know you asked for one thing, but I'm not ever doing my job if I don't say also donate. The research that you mentioned that's here in town, like, my job is easy because it's easy for me to ask for money. We get more back in the research dollars invested in our community than we even raise here. So just incredible work happening in our backyard, and that can only continue thanks to generous donors.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. And I think that that's such a huge, important takeaway to just remember that we're, there are jobs too that are created from the work that you're doing. And we know that there's a lot of women that are in healthcare and a lot of really like incredible experts that are in this space, and love seeing the money go towards something that is really meaningful for our future. So thank you so much, Courtney. And Dr. Quesada?
I would say for me is for women to advocate for themselves. That is something I've seen. I've seen women in tears because they were told there was nothing wrong with them, and they knew there was something wrong. They didn't give up until they found someone that truly listened to them. And so that, that's what makes me so happy that I'm doing the work that I get to do every day. It's what gets me up every morning. And I 100% agree with Courtney. I mean, that prescription of get active, right? Like I really have become such a big advocate for it. And I've seen it in our patients. They come back and they're so proud of how active they've become since their last visit. So I would say those are the two things I want to highlight.
No, I love that so much. And I know we lost Nora. This is very real live pre-recording technology drama. It wouldn't be anything without it. So Nora will hopefully join us before the end. But what I think Nora would say is, I think that she would say, just take accountability over what's right for you and your family, and really just make choices based on what you can actually do now by prioritizing yourself first and then stepping into that next phase. And I, Stevie, now stepping out of Nora and stepping into my space, would talk about creating a community around you that can really support healthier choices. And when I say that, I mean people that actively know that you are trying to be better, and surrounding yourself with those people, creating a community that can help you make those choices on a daily basis and stepping into that. And I just say that because, even as I'm trying to eat less sugar and healthy, I have to have a conversation with my husband fairly frequently about not stopping by UDF and bringing home, even if it is a low-fat shake. I'm like, thank you. Of course I want this. Yes, of course I want this. I don't need it, and it's not a part of something, like, it's not in service of the vision of my life that I see. But thank you, and of course I drink it because it's a UDF milkshake and it's amazing. So we'll do better tomorrow. And so I think that as we're kind of wrapping this up, I just really encourage people to consider taking a look at our website that we have for Go Red. So it's wisewellnessskill.com/wisegoesred, and I'll make sure I put that into the chat. There's a lot of incredible tools on there that you'll find. The ability to donate, as Courtney said, is something that is, if you can even give $1, $5, anything is meaningful. If you do give $100, it's amazing because you do get a free ticket to the May 6th Go Red event that's taking place, and it's just really incredible and empowering. So encouraging you there, but there's a lot of other tools that we'll be sharing that you may have seen throughout the course of this month. So we'll have hands-only CPR. The reality of it is, especially during times of COVID, if somebody is experiencing heart failure or having an episode, mouth to mouth is not something that people are diving into. And I think it's not something that we would necessarily encourage. So this is one area that we will be sharing more information on that, on how you can sign up for Research Goes Red, various lifestyle choices that you can really kind of encourage yourself to get involved with movement. We know that the Heart Mini Marathon is always an incredible way to meet new people. And so there's a lot of really great work being led by Amanda Valentine of our community. And just, I would say there is no shortage of events that WISE is going to be doing this month that will be on behalf of and advocating for American Heart Association over the course of February and March. So take a look on our website. You'll see all of that. And I'm just really grateful for your time today. Thank you all so much. Courtney, Dr. Quesada, and Nora Fink, I really appreciate your time this afternoon and looking forward to supporting women's heart health moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Stevie.
All right, thanks.